Selina Rahayu, the radiant Malaysian heiress, and Adrian Malek, her charming new husband, seemed to be the perfect couple as they arrived in Istanbul for a glamorous honeymoon. But behind the smiles and luxury, a deadly secret was already unfolding. Selina Rahayu had been raised in a world of elegance, her life shaped by wealth, influence and expectations that came with her family name. From the time she was young, she moved in circles where designer dresses, grand parties, and luxury vacations were normal. Her family was one of the most respected in Malaysia, with businesses stretching across finance, real estate, and international trade. People admired not only the fortune behind her surname, but also the charm and composure that Selina carried so effortlessly. She grew into a woman who had both beauty and confidence, and many described her as someone who seemed to belong to the glamorous world of magazine covers. When she met Adrian Malek, it seemed like fate had written their story. Adrian was everything the public could adore in a match for her. Tall, strikingly handsome, and with a magnetic personality that instantly drew attention. He had the charisma to win over any room he walked into. On social media, their love story appeared flawless. Photographs of romantic dinners, extravagant trips, and smiling moments that created the image of two people perfectly in love. For Selina's family and friends, Adrian seemed like the man who could finally give her the kind of partnership she deserved, and for Selina herself, he was a promise of adventure and loyalty. The wedding was unlike anything the city had seen in years. The halls glittered with golden chandeliers, designer gowns floated through the room, and media outlets captured every detail. Selina wore a gown custom-made in Paris, her presence radiant as if she were stepping into a fairy tale. Adrian, in his finely tailored suit, played the part of a devoted husband flawlessly. Every photograph of the event showed him gazing at her as though she was his entire world. The union between the wealthy heiress and her charming suitor was celebrated across Malaysia as a story of modern romance. For their honeymoon, the couple chose Istanbul, a city that mirrored both tradition and luxury. The decision seemed perfect, an ancient city where East met West, where history blended with beauty and where love stories had been told for centuries. As the airplane touched down in Turkey, Selina's excitement was impossible to hide. She spoke endlessly about the palaces she wanted to see, the shopping districts she had read about, and the rooftop dinners overlooking the Bosphorus. Istanbul for her was a dream destination. Adrian, on the surface, appeared equally thrilled, but inside his mind, he carried thoughts that were far darker than Selina could ever imagine. Their arrival at the luxury hotel was nothing short of glamorous. Staff members remembered Selina's dazzling smile as she walked through the marble lobby, her silk scarf trailing elegantly behind her. The couple checked into one of the finest suites, overlooking the shimmering waters of the city. From the outside, they appeared to be exactly what everyone expected, the picture of newlywed bliss. They wandered through bustling bazaars, hand in hand, surrounded by the scents of spices and the echo of street music. Photographers even caught glimpses of them near Hagia Sophia and Topkapi Palace, blending in with crowds of tourists. Yet even in those first days, small cracks began to appear. Adrian was possessive, his gaze often fixed on Selina as though watching her every move. Whenever she lingered at a shop or admired something too long, his expression hardened, only to soften again when he noticed onlookers around. Selina, ever composed, brushed aside the subtle discomfort, convincing herself it was nothing more than a husband's protective nature. She did not see that Adrian's charm was a carefully maintained mask, hiding a restless mind already calculating steps far beyond a honeymoon. While Selina immersed herself in the romance of the city, Adrian was focused on opportunity. Istanbul offered him more than beauty, it offered Here, far from her family's circle of protection, Selina was vulnerable. The very trip that was meant to begin their life together was, in his mind, the perfect chance to end her. Every moment they shared, the candlelit dinners, the sightseeing, the photographs, was carefully staged by Adrian to maintain the illusion of a devoted husband. Behind the laughter and the public display of affection, he was already preparing for a plan that would shock everyone who believed in their love story. The honeymoon glittered like a dream for Selina, but for Adrian it was nothing more than a curtain drawn over a hidden darkness. In the streets of Istanbul, where love stories had flourished for centuries, this marriage carried a secret destined to end in tragedy. The stage was set, the audience unaware, and the most dangerous man in her life was the one walking beside her. From the moment Selina and Adrian settled into their honeymoon routine, the charm of Istanbul seemed to wrap around them. The city was alive with color and sound, fishermen along the Galata Bridge, the hum of call to prayer rising from mosques, the flickering lights of rooftop restaurants that reflected across the Bosphorus at night. To anyone watching, the couple appeared inseparable, moving through the city like figures from a glossy magazine. But behind those photographs of laughter and glamour, tension had already begun to take root. The hotel staff were among the first to sense something unusual. Lila Orhun, a receptionist who saw countless couples come and go, noticed subtle shifts that others might have ignored. On the first day, Selina checked in with vibrant energy, her voice cheerful, her gestures filled with excitement. By the second night, Lila saw her again in the lobby, moving with a slower step, her eyes lowered as if carrying a weight no one else could see. The sparkle of a honeymoon bride seemed to fade in just a few days, replaced with something quieter, almost hesitant. Adrian's presence was different from his wife's. He exuded control in every interaction, speaking on her behalf at the front desk, ordering meals with authority, and keeping her close whenever they were in public spaces. He looked like a devoted husband, yet there was an edge to his behavior that unsettled those who paid close attention. He watched Selina constantly as though he feared losing her in a crowd, or worse, losing control over her completely. At restaurants, he often leaned forward, whispering sharply when Selina glanced at her phone or paused to admire something across the street. She smiled politely, but her expressions carried a faint stiffness, as if she was playing a role she no longer enjoyed. What Selina didn't realize was that Adrian had come into this marriage with secrets buried deeper than she imagined. While she believed she had married for love, Adrian had married for survival. Back in Kuala Lumpur, his life was unraveled. Debts piled high from gambling, reckless investments, and the false image of wealth he had tried to maintain. The marriage was his escape route, and Selina's fortune was the lifeline he had set his sights on. To her, he was the man who promised adventure and romance. To him, she was the key to erasing a future filled with ruin. Their days in Istanbul began to mirror their inner reality. During sightseeing trips, Selina admired the artistry of the Blue Mosque, lingered at the Grand Bazaar with fascination, and gazed out from ferry rides across the water. Adrian played the role of a partner, but his eyes were not on the view. His focus remained on Selina, her jewelry, her handbag, her gestures that reminded him of the wealth she carried with her, wealth he could not yet touch. Each refusal she made when he hinted at financial help became another flame of anger burning quietly within him. The city's beauty that enchanted her became, for him, a reminder of his growing desperation. One evening, as the couple returned to their suite after dining at a lavish rooftop restaurant, Lila once again noticed something troubling. Selina's face was pale, her shoulders tense as Adrian guided her quickly through the lobby, his hand gripping her wrist tightly. It was a moment that lasted only seconds, but it lingered in the memory of the staff who witnessed it. Whispers began among them. Was this marriage already in trouble? Could the perfect couple be hiding fractures behind their polished image? Adrian knew the walls were closing in, his debts were not waiting, and his wife was far less yielding than he had anticipated. She had been generous with affection, but cautious with money, unwilling to hand over control of her family's fortune. The very qualities that made her strong and admirable were the ones that turned her into his obstacle. In Istanbul, away from the watchful eyes of her family and the protections of her homeland, he saw the opportunity he had been waiting for. The tension between them grew quietly but steadily, like cracks forming in glass. Selina felt the unease, but she dismissed it as the normal adjustments of married life. She told herself that travel stress, fatigue, and the weight of expectations were the causes of Adrian's short temper. She still believed in the story they had sold to the world, a story of romance, unity, and adventure. Yet, what she could not see was the storm building behind Adrian's carefully maintained charm. Every smile he gave her in public concealed a darker thought. Every hand he placed gently on her shoulder was a reminder of the control he refused to lose. As the nights in Istanbul passed, Adrian's mask of devotion grew thinner, and the man beneath it, driven by greed and desperation, prepared himself for the choice he believed he had no other option but to make. On the fourth night of their stay in Istanbul, the illusion of romance collapsed. The day had started as any other, with Selina waking to the soft glow of sunlight through the sweet windows and Adrian insisting they explore one of the city's oldest districts. They spent hours wandering through cobblestone streets, browsing silk scarves and handmade jewelry, blending in with the other tourists. To passers-by, they were still the beautiful couple in love, yet behind closed doors, unease had begun to suffocate the atmosphere in their suite. Adrian had grown increasingly short-tempered, his charm fraying at the edges, his movements sharp and restless. Selina, tired from the intensity of travel and his constant scrutiny, retreated into silence. That night, guests on the same floor later recalled faint disturbance, a noise of something heavy dragging, the muffled thud of movement inside the luxury suite, and then silence again. When Adrian reappeared in the lobby hours later, he looked composed, carrying with him a large suitcase. Security cameras recorded the moment with quiet indifference. He walked through the marble corridors with steady steps, as though nothing unusual had happened, and wheeled the suitcase into the Istanbul night. The cameras did not capture Selina leaving the hotel again. By the following morning, whispers of concern had already begun. The hotel staff noticed Adrian alone at breakfast, ordering with calm confidence, explaining to the waiter that his wife was unwell and preferred to rest in the room. A few hours later, when staff cleaned their suite, they found her belongings, dresses, jewelry, and most disturbingly, her phone and handbag still untouched. To those who knew Selina, this was unthinkable. She never left without her phone. It was her lifeline, her connection to friends, family, and the world she had grown up in. When evening arrived and Selina still did not appear, suspicions grew stronger. Adrian approached the front desk, his voice smooth and collected, explaining that Selina had gone shopping alone in the nearby bazaar, and must have lost track of time. His composure was unnerving. His eyes carried none of the panic or worry that one might expect from a husband whose wife had disappeared in a foreign city. Lila Orhun, the receptionist, remembered the conversation vividly. To her his words sounded rehearsed, almost mechanical, and his posture betrayed a cold detachment. It did not take long before the Istanbul police were notified. Missing tourists were not uncommon, but the details surrounding Selina's disappearance immediately raised concern. Detective Cem Karadag was assigned to investigate, and his instincts were sharp from years of navigating cases, tangled in deception. As he reviewed the early reports, one fact stood out. No witness had seen Selina leave the hotel since that previous night. Surveillance footage, meticulously checked frame by frame, confirmed the suspicion. Selina had entered the hotel with Adrian, but she had not been seen leaving. The footage of Adrian wheeling out the oversized suitcase became a crucial. While there was nothing inherently suspicious about luggage, the timing was damning. It coincided perfectly with the last known sighting of Selina. The detective began questioning staff, and small details emerged. Selina's sudden change in mood during her stay, the controlling nature of her husband, and his unsettling calmness after she had vanished. Together they formed a portrait of a man whose mask of devotion was beginning to crumble. For Adrian, maintaining his performance became harder by the hour. He answered questions with smooth precision, explaining that Selina often enjoyed time alone, insisting she would return soon, but his story contained cracks. He could not explain why she had left behind her belongings. He could not justify the absence of her name on any shopping receipts, or her face on street cameras. The more he spoke, the more it became clear that his words were a carefully crafted shield. As Istanbul's night markets filled with light and music, Selina's absence grew more haunting. Her family, thousands of miles away in Malaysia, had no idea that the glamorous honeymoon was unraveling into tragedy. Messages from friends went unanswered, and her social media, once filled with pictures of her travels, remained silent. Every hour of silence deepened the suspicion that Selina Rahayu was not missing by accident, but by design. Detective Karadag, now fully immersed in the case, felt the weight of urgency. The city was vast, its streets capable of swallowing secrets, yet his instincts told him the answer was not far. The truth was within the walls of the hotel, captured on its cameras, hidden in the calm demeanor of a man who believed he was smarter than everyone around him. The disappearance was no longer a mystery of where Selina had gone, but rather what had been done to her, and why her husband's every word felt like a practiced performance. The stage of Istanbul, once meant for a honeymoon, had transformed into the scene of a calculated vanishing act that carried all the marks of murder. The search for Selina Rahayu ended in horror when a suitcase was discovered drifting along the edge of the Bosphorus. Local fishermen had noticed it first, bobbing against the tide, and called authorities to retrieve it. What appeared at first to be discarded luggage quickly revealed its sinister contents. Wrapped in hotel sheets, bound tightly to prevent movement, lay the body of the young Malaysian bride. The discovery shocked not only Istanbul but soon reached headlines across Asia, the glamorous story of a wealthy newlywed, now ending in tragedy by the waters of a historic city. The case was handed to Dr. Farid Hossein, a forensic pathologist, known for his meticulous work. In the sterile silence of the morgue, he unwrapped the body and began his examination. Selina's face carried the unmistakable marks of violence, her skin discolored where bruises told their silent story. Around her neck, faint impressions revealed the pressure of hands, the evidence of strangulation. The cause of death was clear: she had been killed deliberately, and her final moments had been brutal. For Hossein, each bruise and mark pieced together the reality of what had taken place in that luxury hotel suite. Detective Cem Karadag, already suspicious of Adrian's behavior, now had undeniable confirmation. This was no disappearance, no accident in a foreign city. It was a murder carefully concealed but poorly executed. The timing of the suitcase leaving the hotel, Adrian's strange calmness, and the forensic evidence, all pointed in the same direction. The detective felt a mixture of grim satisfaction and sorrow as the truth unfolded. He knew greed was often at the heart of such crimes, but the brutality of it still weighed heavily on him. A woman had trusted her new husband, only to have her life taken during what should have been the happiest days of her life. The investigation deepened as police searched through Adrian's records. What they uncovered was a tangled web of lies. In Kuala Lumpur, Adrian had been living a life far beyond his means. He had cultivated an image of success, but in reality he was drowning in debt. Creditors chased him, gambling losses piled up, and his financial ruin seemed inevitable. His marriage to Selina was not an act of love, but of desperation. He believed her fortune could erase his past mistakes and secure his future. When she resisted his pressure to release funds, his desperation turned into rage, and rage into violence. Adrian had chosen Istanbul for more than romance. The city was distant, foreign, and away from the watchful eyes of Selina's powerful family. Here, he believed, he could act without consequence. The murder had been planned in fragments: the late-night suitcase, the disposal in the Bosphorus, the carefully rehearsed story of a wife who had gone shopping and never returned. He thought he could disguise his crime as a random tragedy in a sprawling city, but arrogance often blinds the guilty, and Adrian's arrogance left behind trails that were impossible to ignore. The forensic report alone was enough to dismantle his story. Selina had not wandered into danger on her own. She had been killed in the very place Adrian was last seen with her. The hotel sheets wrapped around her body were identical to those in their suite. Surveillance footage placed him leaving the building with the suitcase at the precise time the medical examiner confirmed her death. Every thread tied back to him. For the police, it was no longer a matter of speculation,
but of proof. Adrian had underestimated how closely investigators would examine every angle. He had relied on the chaos of a foreign city to protect him, but instead, Istanbul had captured his crime on camera, preserved it in forensic evidence, and recorded it in the memories of hotel staff, who noticed his unsettling composure. The discovery of Selina's body marked the turning point. What began as whispers of suspicion now became a storm of accusation. Media outlets swarmed the story, painting Adrian as the cold husband who had killed his bride for wealth. Headlines spread across borders, and in Malaysia, the Rahayu family was crushed by grief. Their daughter had left home for a honeymoon filled with promise, only to return in silence, her story rewritten by betrayal. For Detective Karadag, the case revealed itself in full clarity. Adrian Malek's mask had fallen, his carefully constructed illusion of devotion shattered. Beneath the surface of charm lay nothing but greed, cruelty, and the arrogance of a man who believed he could outsmart both love and law. The suitcase in the Bosphorus became not only evidence of his crime, but a symbol of how far a man would go to destroy the very person who trusted him most. Adrian Malek was arrested at Istanbul airport just hours before boarding a flight back to Malaysia. He had booked the ticket under his own name, confident he could slip away once the police grew tired of searching. What he had not anticipated was the speed with which the evidence had been assembled against him. Detectives intercepted him at the departure gate, their presence drawing startled looks from other travelers, as they placed the wealthy newlywed groom in handcuffs. The image of the once celebrated husband, now shackled and surrounded by officers, marked the beginning of his fall. In interrogation rooms, Adrian maintained his composure. He spoke with the same smooth tone he had always used, insisting that Selina's death was a mystery to him. He repeated the claim that she had left the hotel to shop and never returned. He pretended shock when told her body had been recovered from the Bosphorus, wrapping his words in false grief. Yet the mask he had worn so carefully was no longer convincing. Detectives laid out the evidence, the hotel sheets identical to those in his suite, the surveillance footage of him wheeling the heavy suitcase, and the forensic report confirming strangulation. Each fact dismantled his carefully rehearsed story, leaving him exposed as a man with motive, means, and opportunity. The trial that followed became an international spectacle. News outlets in Malaysia and Turkey reported every detail, transforming the courtroom into a stage watched by millions. Selina's family sat in silence, their grief filling the room like an unspoken weight. They listened as witnesses recounted what they had seen, the staff member who noticed Adrian's controlling behavior, the surveillance experts who reviewed the footage, and the forensic pathologist who described the injuries on Selina's body. Piece by piece the truth emerged, and the image of a devoted husband crumbled beyond repair. Adrian's defense argued desperation, claiming financial pressure had clouded his judgment, but the court saw through the excuse. Greed was not a cloud but a choice, and his choice had been to end the life of a woman who trusted him. His arrogance became his undoing. He had believed Istanbul's vastness could hide his crime, that distance from Selina's powerful family would shield him, and that his charm could bend suspicion away. Instead, every detail he overlooked became a nail in the coffin of his defense. The suitcase, the sheets, the timing, the calm demeanor, each told the story of premeditation. When the verdict was delivered, the room was silent. Adrian Malek was found guilty of murder, his sentence ensuring he would spend decades behind prison walls in a country far from home. The man who once basked in the glow of wealth and admiration was now reduced to a prisoner, his name forever tied to betrayal and tragedy. He showed little emotion as the judgment was read, his face a mask that finally cracked only when he realized there would be no escape, no second chance, no possibility of reclaiming the image he had so carefully built. For Selina's family, justice brought no comfort. Their daughter's life had been stolen, her future erased in the very beginning of what was supposed to be her happiest chapter. The Rahayu name, once celebrated for prosperity and grace, now carried the shadow of her murder. In Malaysia, people who had once admired the glamour of her wedding now spoke of caution, reminding each other that even the most perfect love story can conceal darkness. Istanbul, once a city of romance for the young bride, had become the place where trust ended in tragedy. Detective Cem Karadag closed his files with a heavy heart. For him, the case was not just about evidence, but about the reminder of how dangerous love could become when greed corrupted. He thought often of the surveillance footage, the calm face of Adrian walking through the hotel lobby with a suitcase that held the truth of his crime. It was a moment that revealed everything about human arrogance, how killers sometimes believe their intelligence will outmatch the persistence of justice. Selina's story remained etched into the memory of both nations. Her life, filled with promise, beauty and privilege, had been cut short by the one person who should have protected her. The honeymoon that was meant to mark a beginning had instead become her end. Adrian's fall was a warning written in tragedy. The greatest danger can come not from strangers, but from those closest to the heart.